All right, welcome to today's town hall with Mad Security. We're just going to give it a couple more moments because we do see the joining numbers increasing still. I try to give everyone about another minute or two, week to or a month to month, to let it tabletop off before we get started here. But welcome, we definitely appreciate you all being here today. All right, actually, it looks like everybody is getting in here now, so we will go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much. Good afternoon. Welcome to Mad Security's February Town Hall. I'm Adam Starnes, the account manager here at Mad Security, takes care of all of our current clients. We are really glad that you're joining us today. As always, I'd like to start by saying thank you. Thank you to those that have joined us month after month. We truly appreciate your engagement and the trust that you've placed in us here at Mad Security, and as well as to anyone joining us for the first time today. We're definitely glad that you're here. Before we jump in, I want to set some expectations. Today's session is going to intentionally be conversational, similar to the last two town halls. The CMMC doesn't live in a silo, and neither should the conversation around it. In January, we focused heavily on timelines, enforcement, readiness, what 2026 looks like. Today, we're going to zoom out a bit, and we're going to talk about something just as important: how CMMC aligns with your business decisions, things like your company culture and contracts, not just cybersecurity tools. And again, as usual, I'm here today joined with Jaclyn Jones, our compliance lead here at Mad Security, who works hands-on with the organizations every day as they navigate these exact challenges. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Bear with me just for a moment. Had a problem with the slide swapping over here. All right, perfect. All right, one of the biggest misconceptions that we still see in CMMC is that IT or cybersecurity is the only initiative. There is that conception out there. While cybersecurity controls are absolutely part of it, CMMC impacts leadership decisions, budgeting, hiring, contracts, operations, day-to-day employee behavior, and many more things. Organizations that treat CMMC just as a security project often struggle, not because they don't care or they're not trying to meet the requirements, but because they underestimate how broad the impact really is. They think of it as an IT project. Uh, so, Jaclyn, where have you seen that organizations get into trouble when they treat CMMC as it's just the IT only responsibility?
Yeah, sure. So just to reiterate, CMC is not just about the IT department. One of the common mistakes we see is when the organization does try to make everything, the IT department own everything by default, when actually there's several CMC controls that aren't even related to the IT department. For example, there's HR. So there's onboarding, offboarding, user awareness training, employee term or transfers to a different role. Leadership, they're the ones who make decisions about, funding the CMC efforts, budgets, things like that, accepting the risk. People in charge of the facility, the physical security access. So there's the badging system, locked doors, things like that, and none of those are usually part of the IT department. So what happens when you do try to make it only be IT focused, then at the time of the certification assessment, the IT team is ultimately responsible for talking about all these controls, producing all of the evidence, but they don't have the necessary knowledge and they don't have the access to the tools to actually pull the evidence that's required. So CMC should really be built into your daily operations company wide, and the right departments need to be involved from the very beginning of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as Jaclyn said, CMMC is an organizational commitment. Whenever we talk to clients on a regular basis, a lot of times they'll say, "Hey, please talk to my IT department." But just know it's going to be more than your IT department that needs to be involved for sure. Whole organization. All right, so we will move on. One area that often gets overlooked is culture. Here at Mad Security, we're intentional about building culture around security and compliance. That looks like making sure everyone is completing their user awareness training, reinforcing expectations like not piggybacking through secured doorways whenever you have to key in, ensuring that badge access and logging are taken very seriously. If your organization handles CUI or controlled unclassified information, your responsibility isn't just internal compliance, it's protecting national security. That minds that mindset shift, it definitely matters. CMMC isn't just about what tools you deploy, it's about whether your people are doing what they're supposed to, even when no one is watching. So another question for you, Jaclyn: how does company culture and everyday behavior show up during audits, even when it's not explicitly scored?
Sure. So what the assessor is looking for is that people are following the processes naturally. They understand the responsibilities. The evidence exists because the organization is operating that way in their daily basis. Task only just performed at audit time and for audit readiness, and then they're forgotten about. So the way people behave when the assessor is observing them and answer questions when they're not following a set script. So when the assessor does an outside visit, they are actually observing the things that the employees are doing, such as the assessor is going to want to be considered a visitor and treated as such. And that the way you treat the assessor should follow your defined visitor process. Escort them at all times. If the assessor witnesses an employee casually propping open a door or leaving a door, that should be secured, let someone piggyback in behind them, not making them badge through them by themselves as well. So those are things that the assessor can tell very quickly if the employee actually understands how the controls are implemented, how they respond to their questions. If they ask them questions, are they repeating the policies or procedures word for word? If they are, that would be a red flag, and that's actually going to cause more issues than if they just basically, if they're was built into your process, built into your daily operations, you can just, this employee should be able to talk about what they do on a daily basis, shouldn't have to recite a script or anything like that, because the assessors do want to see consistency, and that gives them proof that the processes are repeatable, which is exactly kind of what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one thing that Jaclyn brought up, I actually experienced firsthand. We were on site helping with the physical portion of an assessment with the client, and the the boss of this group that was leading leading the assessment efforts for the company asked one of the employees to wait for the assessor to arrive, and the assessor or the employee made a suggestion like, "Can I just bring her back?" And he's like, "No, we've absolutely got to get her the guest badge the same way we do everything. Scan her in, sign her in, let her come through the whole process." So you see, yeah, what she mentions is it's just part of the culture. You treat the assessor the same way that you would anybody whenever they come on site. So absolutely, it's part of the company culture. All right. So one of the biggest lessons that we've learned is that CMMC success requires both people and processes. We touched on this within the culture section a little bit, but let's continue. Your documentation, your SSP, for example, may state that your organization does something in a very specific way, but that alone is not enough. That process must actually be implemented. And even if it's documented and implemented, your people must know how to produce the right evidence or artifacts to prove it during the assessment. The reverse is also true. Someone can have something implemented correctly, but if it's not documented accurately, then you can still fail that control. Or your people may know how to explain something confidently and properly during the audit, but if it isn't implemented or if it isn't documented correctly, the control still fails. All three must align. It must be documented, it must be implemented, and understood well enough to actually prove it during the audit process, during that final assessment. If one of those is missing, the control is not met. So, Jaclyn, how often do you see organizations struggle not because they don't meet the controls, but because documentation, implementation, or the people aren't fully aligned?
Yeah, this is the most common things we see. So documentation may describe an ideal process with the company, this is a great practice, let's do this going forward. But that process does not actually match what they're currently doing. Maybe they had good intentions saying we're going to start doing this, and then they don't actually do it. Another common mistake we see is the company adopting policy templates, but they don't customize those templates to match what the organization is actually doing. They just leave that placeholder text in there, not thinking about the fact that they need to remove it. Another common mistake is basically if you do take policy templates and you read the description, read the content that's in them, and you decide that's great security practice. We're going to put this in going forward, and just verbatim, we're going to follow all of these. But then it comes time for the certification assessment, and you have no evidence to show that you're doing that. You don't have any documentation in place, no tickets to prove that you're doing certain things, and so therefore you end up having issues during your assessment. We also see issues with documentation that is correct to begin with. When they first begin the remediation, or maybe even at the end of it, everything's fine, everything matches up. But over time, as they implement new tools, new technology, or processes change, they don't update the documentation to reflect that. So if at any point that the documentation does become misaligned, that the written documentation no longer matches up with technical control, then at that point, there is a misalignment there. So the people also need to be aligned. So they need to understand what is documented, what is implemented. The assessor is going to want to talk to the people who are actually implementing the control and doing these processes on a daily basis. So if those people cannot accurately describe what is currently in place, what's documented, what the technical control is, that's a major misalignment that will cause you issues during your assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, CMMC is just not about knowing the right answers. It's proving that what you say, what you write down, what you do, it all aligns. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so another major factor in CMMC success is accountability across the entire organization. As I mentioned before, CMMC is not owned by IT alone. Yes, IT plays a major role, but HR, leadership, contracts, operations, facilities, they all have responsibilities that directly impact CMMC compliance. For example, IT owns the access controls, logging, monitoring, configurations. HR may own the onboarding, offboarding, role changes, background checks, training records. Leadership will own things like decisions, prioritization, funding, enforcement. Contracts and procurement may own understanding flow down requirements and third party responsibilities, while facility and operations owns physical access controls, visitor logs, and badge enforcement. Assessors can Assessors can tell very quickly when compliance lives in a silo versus when it's shared across departments. So you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, Jaclyn, but let's go into a little more. How does it show during assessments when accountability is shared versus when everything has just been pushed off to IT?
Sure. So the assessor can often tell within the first day of the certification assessment if the organization has built CMMC compliance in their daily operations, or if they're just trying to pass their certification assessment and maybe just push it off on IT. So when accountability is shared, the right people they speak confidently to the assessor during the certification assessment. They can produce the right evidence. HR has onboarding records they can pull up at any given moment, training records of training completion records, offboarding records, offboarding checklist. Facilities will have badging access system logs, and so they can pull those up. Evidence be produced very quickly is very important in an assessment, because if you do tend to take a lot of time to pull up the evidence, or maybe you don't have it right away, your assessor may lose confidence in the fact that you are actually meeting the requirements of the control. So they might ask more questions, and it just may prolong your assessment. But when everything's pushed to IT, on the other hand, the IT staff, again, struggle with trying to answer the questions. They don't own that. That's not their responsibility. The documentation for that is often complete, because they don't, if they're the ones responsible for doing the documentation, they don't understand what is actually, real world practice for the company. So they just document what they think is happening, and it doesn't reflect the real world. And then evidence gets delayed because the right people are not the ones talking. So accountability truly needs to be shared rather than just be pushed into IT.
Yeah, 100%. CMMC works best when everybody knows their role and they are prepared to support it, for sure. All right, so CMMC has direct impact on contracts and competitiveness. We're already seeing primes ask for SPRS scores, readiness timelines, evidence long before contracts are awarded or renewals are coming up. CMMC readiness influences whether you're seen as a low risk or a high risk partner. So, Jaclyn, how does compliance readiness impact an organization's position when they're dealing with primes and contract opportunities?
Sure. So what we're seeing is prime contractors are lining up their secure supply chain. they have to flow down the CMC requirements if they give a subcontractor CUI data related to a specific contract. So we're already seeing contractors ask the subcontractors for their current SPRS scores. If they're not at a 110 yet, we're seeing them given projected dates to get that 110 score, and then also when they expect to achieve their CMC level 2 certification. If the subcontractor can't state what its current state is, like CMC status is, doesn't know what its current SPRS score is, and they don't have a plan to achieve that 110 score and obtain their certification by a specific date, then the prime contractor is likely going to see them to be a higher risk. And if they have a pool of contractors and they can essentially select having available, more than just one company, then they're likely going to go with a company that provides a lower risk to them, because again, they have to flow down the requirements and they are ultimately responsible for making sure that CUI is secured. So they're going to go with their low risk option if they do have that option available.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jaclyn deals with that, talks to a lot of people in those types of situations, as well as me on this side of the organization. I deal with all of our current clients, as well as people that are considering to come on to work with and partner with Mad Security for their CMMC and their cybersecurity needs. We have a lot of SOC clients that are now starting to get questionnaires. Maybe they didn't take CMMC as something that they wanted to focus on beforehand, and now that they're starting to get questionnaires and they're starting to get requirements sent in, they're like, hey, we're ready to get started on this now. We've got a lot of people coming to Mad Security that are not current clients as well, coming and saying, hey, I've get this questionnaire, or there's this contract now, and this contract's giving me till this date. What can we do to get here? So it's starting to get serious. A lot of people are looking. We've talked about this before, maybe last month, the month before as well. A lot of people are looking at, what's my deadline? And they'll be like, oh, well, maybe my deadline is November 2026, or maybe that phase doesn't affect me yet. And maybe it's later on. But again, the primes can tell you, we require you to be compliant by this date for you to be eligible for this contract. So that's really what you're going for, is that you're trying to get compliant ready by those times. And you're going to be more competitive whenever you get the bids if you're taking this seriously. So it's definitely, CMMC readiness is definitely something that's going to help you in the contracting area for sure. So organizations that do this well align CMMC with broader business strategy. They plan budgets intentionally, involve leadership early in conversations, and avoid last-minute panic spending. They view compliance as an investment in eligibility and stability, not just a cost. So we actually hear all the time, speaking about the misconception of this is an IT problem. We get a lot of IT managers, directors of ITs that come to us and they're like, my business is going to have to do this. I've already foreseen this. And they've kind of kept it to themselves from that point. It's like, hey, get leadership involved now. If this is something that your business is relying on, contracts within the defense industrial base, I would go ahead and get all the leadership that you can involved, let them go ahead and make these decisions and work this into budget, because this is something that's not going to be a once and done thing. This is going to be something that's going to be a lifestyle, that and a culture change, maybe even perhaps, that you're going to have to continue to do to be able to do business within the DIB. So, and view the investment as, something that you are going to do to get more business, not just as a cost that's costing you more money. Based on what you've seen, Jaclyn, what does it look like when organizations successfully align compliance planning with business goals?
Sure. So the first thing, leadership's involved early, like you mentioned. Leadership lead by example. They make CMC a priority, then everyone else in the company sees that, and then they understand that CMC should be made a priority as well. Budgeting for CMC is planned out over time rather than rush to make a contract to meet a contract requirement. You're not having to suddenly put a bunch of money into something that's not part of your budget that you had planned on, just to kind of like do a rush compliance. Scoping decisions are strategic. Control implementation was well thought out. the practices in place are things that do not significantly hinder the organization's daily operations. Basically, you didn't almost like pigeonhole yourself into one solution, and then you realize suddenly that that just doesn't make sense for you guys going forward. There's clear ownership, realistic timelines, steady progress is being made. The company's mindset is that CMC compliance is viewed as protecting their eligibility for contracts, protecting their revenue, and it's not just about checking a box.
Absolutely. Yeah, strategic planning beats reactive spending every single time. So at Mad Security, our role is to help organizations align cybersecurity compliance and business objectives. Through our virtual compliance manager service and our other managed security offerings, we help break down silos and ensure that the right people are involved at the right time. Jaclyn leads our virtual compliance managers. So Jaclyn, how does having a third-party guide help organizations stay aligned throughout this process?
Sure. So we help bring structure and consistency to the entire process. Your internal staff, they're busy doing their daily tasks that keeps the businesses running, generating that revenue. A lot of people wear many hats and they just can't build some of these tasks that they need to do into their daily process. Because even if you meet your certification requirement or get your certification, there's ongoing tasks you have to do. It's not just a finish and done. So basically, the VCM consultants, we help with coordinating IT, HR, leadership, other departments, make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure documentation stays updated, make sure everyone has their clear responsibilities. We help prevent scope creep. If you need to add a new tool to your environment, we try to make sure we keep your scope reduced as much as possible, because that's one of the main things you can do is to reduce cost complexity to keep your scope as low as, as narrow as you possibly can. So we help you provide guidance for that. Make sure documentation is updated as things change, new tools are put into place, processors change, personnel change roles. Make sure all of that, stays updated as well. We also make sure evidence is collected, because even when you pass your certification assessment, you're doing those self-assessments, you should still collect evidence for all of the controls. We keep you on track with that and let you know which evidence is going to actually be defensible and is what's considered sufficient, as in this is showing definitely you're meeting the requirements of control. So we keep that on track as well. And so having a third party help you, it can help reduce the rework, because basically you get guidance based on what we know what the assessors are actually expecting at this point, because we've helped so many clients through their certification assessments. So it saves the rework because you don't have to waste time guessing. We can actually give you real world example and guide us on what the assessors are truly looking for, what you need to do going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, whether you come to us at Mad Security or you go to another expert, if you're not familiar, if you've never been through CMMC, if you've never been through the assessment to actually become certified, it's very wise to get somebody that's been there, that's been through several assessments, has that experience. So that's definitely something we'd be more than happy to talk to you about if you're interested in hearing how Mad Security might be able to assist you. So we'll save that for another time. You can definitely reach out. We'll give you some ways to do that if that is something of interest to you. So we will get to the live Q&A session here in just a moment. I'd like to say appreciate you staying with us this far and hope you've gotten a lot of valuable information out of this conversation. Before we move on to the live Q&A, I would like to say thank you for being here, and we do have a few giveaways for you. What we have for you today is we have the free pre-assessment. Is going to be a 31 question, yes, no, not sure. You're going to run through it. You're going to answer those questions. It's going to send the results to us. We're going to be able to determine how CMMC ready you actually are for an assessment based on those questions. It'll give us something to have a conversation around. You could fill that, probably take you 5 minutes to actually go through and get those answered. The next giveaway that we have for you is going to be the free CMMC Master Bundle. Within this Master Bundle, there are going to be 5 different documents. They're all going to be valuable in different ways. The first one is the 5 steps to achieving CMMC compliance. The second is CMMC Level 2 Compliance Checklist. The third one is going to be understanding CMMC scope. The fourth is protecting critical data in the defense industry. And 5 is CMMC enclaves. So again, lots of valuable information there. If you'd like to download that, take advantage of reading through that documentation. The third is going to be the free CMMC assessment guide. This is actually going to give you tips to actually going through that final audit and preparing for the assessment. And then the last thing that I do have here for you is you can do a free consultation. You can either use the meeting link. Whenever we send this out after, you can go to the meeting link direct booklet, book directly on my calendar, or you can actually send me an email saying, hey, I'd love to talk more. Here's kind of my situation. And let's set up 15, 30 minutes in the next week or so just to have a conversation around what you're currently doing for CMMC and or cybersecurity, things like SOC endpoint detection, penetration testing, and so on, and see if and how Mad Security might be able to assist you. So again, this will be sent out to everyone afterwards, so you can use these links, or you can go ahead, take you a screenshot now if you would like to go ahead and have that before we get it sent out. And that does bring us to today's live Q&A. Now, this is the part to where we want you to be involved. We know that every organization is different, and we've covered a lot of ground today on a few different topics. So let's open it up for questions. Anything that comes to mind. We're always happy to continue conversations offline if needed. But if you have not already, go ahead and submit all your questions that you do have. That'll be answered by our CMMC compliance expert, Jaclyn. We'll get to as many as we can today that we have time for. And if we do not get to yours here in the town hall, please don't let that keep you from asking them. We will get back to you shortly after. So we're going to give everybody a moment to get those into the Q&A for us to get answered here, and we will just start in order as they are received. We've already got a couple here, and we'll wait on a couple more. All right, got a few more here. Keep them coming. We will go ahead and get started with the ones we have. All right, so Jaclyn, this gentleman asked, how do we get leadership more engaged in CMMC without overwhelming them?
That's a good question. So, keep in mind, leadership doesn't need to know all the technical aspects. They don't need to know how you're implementing every technical control. What they do need to understand, though, is the risk, the accountability, and the business impact. So, the most effective way to engage leadership is think about CMC, talk to them with CMC about contract eligibility, revenue protection, legal exposure, organizational accountability, because those are the terms that they typically understand and need to have a good understanding of. So leadership understands that CMC would affect their competitiveness if they can bid on contracts, if they can basically might be chosen over another company who has similar things. And it's also national security responsibility, not just IT workload. Then engagement usually increases pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the next one. How do we shift our company culture to take CMMC more seriously?
Sure. So culture shifts, it starts with consistency, which I mentioned earlier. So it's not about just making one big announcement. It's about reinforcing the expectations that need to be done daily. Having people complete their user awareness training on time. Enforcing the badge accessing system. Don't let people piggyback. Not allowing basically visitors to walk through the company unescorted. Treating policies as operational procedures and not just paperwork that can essentially only be followed when some people are watching. So biggest thing you can do though is leadership needs to model it. They need to set the expectations and enforce those consistently, and then culture is going to follow. So when CMC becomes something that's not fear-based, people don't, become afraid of it or they don't dread it. Basically, as long as they understand it's responsibility-based, and then gradually the culture will shift toward the way that it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good questions, guys. Keep them coming. We actually got quite a few of them that just came in, so keep submitting them. We're going to get to as many as we can for you. The next one in line that came in here, if our documentation is solid, they've been told that that's good enough. it says, is that not enough?
Yeah, almost every single under the 100 controls, documentation is never enough. The system security plan, the SSP, and the policies may stay exactly what you're doing. But if those processes are implemented or if your team can't produce the evidence to support them, then you're not going to get a passing score on that control. Documentation, implementation, proof of that all must align. If any of those are missing, then you are at risk of failing the entire control. So documentation is rarely ever alone on it or enough on its own.
Absolutely. I've talked about documentation. The people have to be able to talk about it, as well as it has to be implemented for sure. There are a lot of common misconceptions out there for sure. So no, we appreciate you asking all these questions. We can definitely get everything clarified for you. Okay, this is a good question because we did talk about how different departments or all departments need to be involved. It's not just IT. This lady asked us, what departments outside of IT should we get involved first?
Sure. So leadership's thing one. Leadership has to be bought into it because people look to leadership to see what the priorities of the company are. So leadership needs to make it a priority, needs to enforce that across the board. So that's the most important thing. Next, contracts and procurement. Understanding flow down clauses, what you're expected to do, getting a contract from a prime, or if you're going to flow down contract requirements to a subcontractor. So that's kind of like the second thing. HR, very important because they're going to be the ones to do the user onboarding, offboarding. They will probably maintain the user training records as well. So there's things that they need to do. And then facilities is the last one. Whoever's in charge of your physical security of your facility, badging systems, door locks, keys, making sure that those are managed when people leave the company, that access is revoked in a timely manner, all of those things, they need to be involved. And that all the, again, those usually exist outside of IT. So CMC touches all of those. Waiting to involve them until closer to the assessment or the time of the assessment is one of the biggest mistakes that organizations make. They really need to be involved from essentially the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the more prepared, the better for sure. All right. Next question. We'll keep on rolling then. And again, keep them coming. Thank you so much for all the questions we've got submitted here. What is the biggest misalignment that you've seen between departments?
Sure. So the biggest one is documentation does not match operational reality. Is something written in documentation does not reflect what's currently in place at all. So for example, IT may configure something correctly, but the documentation hasn't been updated. Or HR doesn't know what the assessor is going to ask. They're not been prepped for the certification assessment process because the assessors are going to want to talk to the person who's actually implementing it. So if HR is the one who's onboarding a new employee and pretty much grants their approves them to have access to the system, whether it's HR or the manager, whoever that is, the assessor are going to want to talk to those people. And if you don't prep your HR team ahead of time to let them know what questions to be expected to be asked, they may freeze, they may not be able to, answer the questions. And so that causes red flags when you can't really properly answer what the assessor is asking you. And then leadership, if they may not be aware of the risk acceptance language. So if maybe IT documents things that says the company is going to accept this risk and this is what we're not going to put remediation in place, we're just going to accept it. Leadership needs to be aware of that because it's ultimately responsible. They're the ones who are responsible for accepting the risk for the company. So each department, if they assume someone else has it covered, that's also an issue we see. There needs to be some kind of collaboration between them, and communication, of course, is very important. So alignment is what brings clarity to everything, who owns it, what they own, and who can prove it. It's kind of those three things are very important.
Absolutely. No, that's a great answer. Because there can definitely be a lot of misalignments, and I think you hit all of them for sure. See, this gentleman said, how do we know if we are truly audit ready?
Sure. So a good test would be, have you identified who the right person is to answer each control? Can that person answer the assessor's questions confidently and correctly and accurately? So does the documentation match what the person just said that they were doing? Can you produce the evidence within minutes, not hours? If it takes you, if you say, I can't find this evidence today, I have to come back the next day, there does cause some doubt. So you need to be able to produce the evidence ideally within minutes, like a very short time frame. And then also have your controls been operating consistently for several months. So it's really hard to prove that you have a repeatable process and that you have followed what you've documented that you're doing if a tool has only been implemented for like 10 days. So there's no history built up of logs. So there's certain those things is just kind of our red flags for the assessor. So if you can answer yes to all of those, you're likely in a strong position. And it's just, if not, I would take some more time to evaluate. Maybe you need to make sure that you are audit ready before you get to your certification assessment.
All right, looks like we just have, we've got two more, we've got a few more minutes, so I think we're going to be able to get to these. If you do have another question, now is your last chance to kind of get that in so we can hopefully get to it before we end here. We'll keep going with these last two that we have so far. This question, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but it says, what happens if our people can explain a control well, but something small is missing technically?
Yeah, so explanation doesn't override the technical control. So the assessors are going to want to evaluate whether the objective is met. They will talk to you. They want to hear you talk about how the objective is being met. But they also want to see that proof that it is, like if it's a technical control, they want to see the configuration and they want to see it on a live screen share and not just a screenshot that you have in a repository. They want to know that it's basically live on that day, technically implemented. So even if you can explain it, they still want to see proof of that because it is proof points, evidence are very important, and that's how you get full. Basically, you get a med on the control. If not, if you can only explain it, but you can't show the technical piece to back it up, likely they're going to want to, they're going to ask you to present evidence at some point. Maybe if it's not that day, the next day. So they won't give you a passage because you can't explain it. And also when you explain it though, make sure you're talking confidently because confidence is important, but also accuracy is very critical.
Absolutely. So this one is kind of funny to me. If you'll go see our marketing and things, we actually talk about how Mad Security is protecting businesses from evil from that point. This question says, is CMMC really about national security or is it just a compliance exercise?
Yeah, it's absolutely about national security. So the whole CMC, why it exists, the information has operational sensitivity. So it's supposed to be controlled and is unclassified information. So the purpose of CMC ensure that information is not exposed, stolen, misused by any adversary. So when organizations understand they're protecting its defense-related information, and you're not just protecting compliance box, the seriousness and the culture shift will tend to naturally follow. But it is, if you think about CUI, it is defense-related information, and our defense industry contractors are the ones who are, like I said, making parts for a plane or whatever it is, whatever the contractors are doing, it is definitely about national security and protecting the nation, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I first came on, somebody gave me the analogy before. They're like, look, this may just be a small piece of the puzzle, but whenever they get this piece of the puzzle and this piece of the puzzle, and they've got 10 different contractors and they've got all those pieces put together, now they've got some, the enemies may have some serious information. So it's definitely about national security. I know a lot of businesses kind of feel that it's been a little much for that sake, but it really is in the end, all put in place to protect that CUI. I've got just about another minute or two before I have to move on. If there are any other questions, I'll give you just about 30 seconds to get it in here. Going once, going twice. All right. Don't see any questions coming in. Hey, thank you so much for all of those questions that you did send our way. There were some excellent questions in there. We would definitely appreciate you asking those. So I do want to remind you that we do have these every third Thursday at 2 p.m. This next one is March 19th, 2026. We hope to have you back there for it. So please go ahead and save that date in the calendar. I'd like to say again, thank you so much for coming back to be with us. If you do have any questions or requests about content that you would like to see, or which questions or problems that you'd like for us to discuss, please submit those to me. We want to touch on what is important to you. That's what we do these for, so that we can hopefully provide you some valuable information to help you either prepare for CMMC, or maybe you're already prepared and now you're saying, now what after the audit? Or maybe you're in a place that you're just now learning about it, or you're ready to go do the audit, or you think you are and you need help finishing a couple of controls off. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, we're hoping that you're getting value from these town hall webinars and that you keep coming back to see us. We love sharing whatever we've learned throughout the process, and we're all in it together, again, for the sake of national security. So thank you again for joining. Have a great evening, and if not before, we will see and talk to you in March. Thank you so much.